wide receivers time here on the Fantasy Cruncher YouTube channel. I'm the Siege of FantasyCruncher.com. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel just by hitting that nice little subscribe button. And leave in the chat the wide receiver under $6,000 on DraftKings that you think is going to score the most points this week. And you'll be eligible to win 1 week of Fantasy Cruncher Pro for free. So again, all you got to do, leave a name of the wide receiver below 6,000 that you think is going to score the most fantasy points, and you'll be eligible in a drawing to get a free week of Fantasy Cruncher Pro. So with that, let's kind of talk about all the options that we got this week at the wide receiver position. We got a lot of them. So let's do it. So obviously at the top, Michael Thomas is just a beast. He's been just crushing all season long. None of the other receivers the Saints have, Traquan, Ted Ginn, have really established themselves in the receiving threats. 6 consecutive weeks or 11 or more targets, 8 or more catches. He's had 100 yards plus in almost all of his games in 5 of the last 6. He's just been absolutely phenomenal here. Draws a matchup against a Carolina secondary that he's been good on the season, but the last 4 weeks has pretty much struggled. Basically, since they came back from London, they have not been the same in the secondary. If you can afford Michael Thomas, he's a guy that you're going to try to jam in. It's just, you know, we have a salary cap on DraftKings, and sometimes it's hard to pay all the way up here. But I love this spot. The reason why you might not pay up for Michael Thomas is this next tier is super strong. The 7,000s tier up to Julio Jones is just a really strong tier. You got Julio versus the Tampa secondary, and Calvin Ridley 6,500 just below him as well. I don't need to tell you guys how bad the Tampa Bay secondary is. They can allow Jared Goff to run for like 500 yards. Or did I say run? I meant throw for 500 yards. The idea of Jared Goff running for 500 yards sounded more plausible than him throwing for 500 yards. But again, this is Matt Ryan. They've been throwing a ton more after the bye week too. Freeman's still hurt. I think you're going to see this team be pass heavy. And those are negative game scripts, right? Atlanta's been up in both games and still threw the ball over 30 times a game. If they get in a dogfight here against Tampa Bay, they're going to probably throw over 40 to 45 times. I love Julio. I also really like Calvin Ridley this week. And then you also have those Tampa Bay receivers against Atlanta's secondary. They've been better lately for sure, but they faced teams that didn't really have explosive quarterback-wide receiver combination. With multiple wide receivers, I should say, right? They played Drew Brees, who really is, if you could just quadruple cover Michael Thomas, you can stop that passing attack. And then they faced Carolina, who has Kyle Allen, who isn't really an NFL-level quarterback. Now we've got Jameis Winston, who, yeah, okay, he turns the football over sometimes, but he's also just dynamic with some of the stuff he can do. And you got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on both sides. I don't see how Tampa Bay doesn't score points this week. I really like them to score. This is the first meeting between these two teams this year, I believe. You know, you would think this late in the season that, oh, they must have played already. They're in the same division, but they haven't at all. This is the first of their 2 meetings. I'm all about Tampa Bay this week. And so if I'm not getting a Michael Thomas, I'm living in this tier because I want to get Godwin, Evans, Julio. And that's not to dismiss Tyler Lockett either against Philly. It's a great matchup. He's coming off a leg contusion. I think he'll be fine. The Seahawks are saying he's fine. He got a limited practice in today on Thursday. Got feel good about it. Feel good about that as well. Kind of scrolling down a little bit here. There's some other good options. We talked about Calvin Ridley, Jarvis Landry, and Odell Beckham Jr., of course. It's Miami. Last week, John Brown was the number 1 wide receiver on the slate against this secondary. It's a good get-right spot for talented wide receivers that haven't had the big game. Odell here, huge team total, 27.5. Really think that they get Odell Beckham going in this spot. So, again, I really like this tier, and that means I'm going to have to save some money somewhere. You know, we talked about some running back options in the running back video. If you haven't watched the running back video, I encourage you to do so, where we could potentially save some money. But we'll also have some money to save at tight end and defense, and we'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. So, again, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Check it out. Let's kind of just go through some cheaper receivers, though, that we can fit in with some of these studs. I really like Tyrell Williams this week. Really good spot against this bad Jets secondary. He scored in each of his first 5 games and hasn't scored since. They also really haven't had a kind of a need to shoot out. You know, that Lions game, they were kind of up and then down, and he was still coming back from the injury. I feel really good about Tyrell. Big play threat here against a Jets secondary. We saw Darius Slayton have 2 long touchdowns here. Tyrell Williams is 1,000 times better than Darius Slayton ever will be. So give me Tyrell Williams as a nice GPP option this week at wide receiver. Scrolling down, James Washington's priced up a little bit here against Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is one of the worst defenses in the league. No Juju, no Deontay Johnson. He's going to be pretty popular, but at 5K, I think he is worth it. I think he's going to get 6 to 8 targets here, and at that price, hard to ignore. Scrolling down for a couple cheaper options if you need it. D.D. Westbrook got banged up last week. Hopefully he kind of is better this week. The Colts are really good against slots this year, so I think he will have better weeks, and this is a pretty solid one here if he can go against the Titans, who in the last month are actually the worst defense against the pass. So smaller sample size, but as kind of injuries pile up, I do like to limit that sample size a little bit. And you can kind of see on, I don't have it up on this page, but in the last month, they're dead last in the NFL against the wide receivers, so there's some sneaky upside for him as well. Patriots, I'm a N'Keal Harry truther. I love the player. I think he's awesome. He's 3,300 this week. He got 4 targets last week. He played the fewest amount of snaps, only played 32 snaps, but Mohamed Sanu and Philip Dorsett are hurt. We don't know what their status is going to be. He drew 4 targets on 20 routes, which is pretty good. And I think as he gets more and more comfortable with Tom Brady, he's going to get more and more work. He's a big playmaker. The Pats still are having all these red zone issues, and he can go get the ball in the red zone. I think he can take over the Gronk role kind of in the red zone, especially if one of Sanu or Dorsett sit. I really like N'Keal Harry and GPPs. He's a great matchup, too, this week against the Dallas Cowboys secondary. So I think that's definitely interesting. I know it says third here, but they've been a little weaker against the pass lately, and he's a big player out of Arizona State. First-round pick, too. So he'll get looks for sure. Other guys that are cheap that we can consider to try to save some money. Russell Gage here against Tampa. I mentioned they're going to pass the ball a lot. He didn't get a lot of looks last week, but again, I do think in a game that could be a little more wide open, a little more passing friendly, Russell Gage could have a bigger role. And of course, you could always look at, where'd he go? Oh, Josh Gordon, here he is, 4,200. Coming off the bye, he didn't have a huge role before the bye week for Seattle. He had just come over a few days earlier. Now he's going to have had the bye week to get integrated in this offense. I'd look for him to play the vast majority of the snaps, and 4,200 is way too cheap for a player of Josh Gordon's caliber. Finally, I do want to mention 2 more options in this mid-tier that I think are going to be a little bit interesting, especially if you're playing some Cleveland receivers. You can run it back with Devontae Parker. Ever since Preston Williams got hurt, he's gotten 10-plus targets in each of those 2 games. I think that's going to continue here against a Cleveland secondary that can give up some big plays. So I think this price is a little bit too low. I think it should be about 6,200. So you're getting some value there. Playing a Dolphins player, never fun. But again, we've got a salary cap, so I think Devontae Parker is a really nice run-back option if you're playing one of Odell or Jarvis Landry this week. All right, guys, really appreciate you tuning into the wide receivers videos. If you haven't already, watch the quarterbacks and running backs video. Tight end and defense video will be out tomorrow. And again, if you haven't already, leave in the comments section the wide receiver at $6,000 or less that you think is going to put up the most DraftKings points this week, and you'll be entered in a drawing to win a free week of FantasyCruncher Pro. I'm CJ. We'll see you next time.